Hello everyone. Welcome to the fourth episode of IEEE India Council Vani podcast. Today we have with us Mr. Rohit Adlaga alias Growth Champion. Rohit Adlaga is a thought leader, commercial strategist, business transformation, AI and digital revolutionary, entrepreneur visionary, high performance culture, inspirational leadership, and sustainability evangelist. Having spent 27 years in the IT industry, he has truly transformed himself for a Generation X leaders to a digital native. And Rohit was handling multiple CXO roles in Wipro, a company where he worked for more than 25 years. He is now advising multiple companies in the area of AI, collaboration, wellness, and water sustainability. With a personal value system of social responsibility along with integrity and empathy, he has championed a compassionate and social relevant face of AI. He is the part of old economic firm Global Future Council collaborating with platforms, initiatives, and communities on inclusive, forward looking, and complexity conscious responses to AI's most pressing challenges. This is the second in person podcast, IC Vani podcast series. We are happy to host this podcast, New Horizon College of Engineering, Bangalore. I am 𝐓𝐶𝐞𝐬𝐴, website coordinator at IEEE India Council Vani and a volunteer at IEEE Women in Engineering Bangalore section. Without any further delays, let us start the podcast.
Thank you so much, Vamsi, and thank you for the kind words. There's a lot about me, and thank you for welcoming me, and happy to chat with you and our audience for the next 30 minutes.
I hope this session will be very useful across the India Council members and non-IEEE members too. Okay. And the first question for us, what is your opinion on the modern industrial revolution? Are we leading to sustainable economical progress and development together?
So, the word revolution itself means that it's disruptive, it's transformative. And the first industrial revolution, of course, happened in the 19th century. The second one in the 20th century, steam, electricity, the third one being IT. And we are in what I call the fourth industrial revolution now, which is a combination of the physical, virtual, and biological worlds. The fact is that everyone has moved into a realm of what I call instant gratification and instant rewards. So if people want to see a movie, you don't need to switch on your television. It's available on your mobile at the click of a button through Netflix. And if you see the way internet has progressed, if you look at one internet minute in this fourth industrial revolution, there is so much of buzz, so much of blitzkrieg that's happening. For example, all of us do shopping on Amazon. So globally, in 1 minute, we have $280,000 of shopping done on Amazon in 1 minute. We all love Google, most of us do. And there are 5.7 million searches on Google that happen every minute. We all love WhatsApp, I'm sure. And there are 44 million WhatsApp messages which are sent every minute. So there is an absolute overdose of information. We as humans generate 100 MB of data per minute unknowingly. What we do, what we eat, how we speak, how we transact, that's 100 MB of data every minute. So if you look at it, this entire revolution is really changing the way we do business, the way we interact with each other. And now with the metaverse coming in, our entire universe itself is changing from the physical to the digital world. So in my view, technology is here to stay. Industrial revolution will keep disrupting ourselves. And 85% of the growth that happens in every economy is actually happening through technology itself. The question is that whether you're maintaining it in a sustainable and equitable fashion or not, your second part of the question. And the fact is that most of the times an industrial revolution brings in positivity, but sometimes there are flip sides to it also. For example, when the steam engine came, everyone rejoiced that you have mobility now, but that has brought in so much of what we call climatic impact and carbonization in the climate itself. People are touting about artificial intelligence, and by end of this year, there'll be 75 million jobs that will be taken over by AI. But of course, there are 133 million more jobs which are coming in. So while everything looks good from a disruption and transformation perspective, I think we should maintain that balance of diversity, equanimity, inclusion, and sustainability so that we have a better planet to live on.
Yeah, happy to know that as we can say the progress can be on positive way and a negative way also. Okay, then what was your thoughts on the new possibilities available for young minds in exploring tech for innovation?
So if I were to look at India itself, roughly 50% of the population is below the age of 25, and 65% of the population is below the age of 35. Of course, I've crossed that age long time back. And the way the technology is moving, we are about $80 trillion world economy that is supposed to double by 2050. So that's not too far off, 28 years. And since in a lot of the developed countries, the aging population challenge is there, countries like India, which still have such a young population, will come to the forefront. And I'll cite the example of startups itself, which are big in India. There are close to 73,000 startups in India. And why I've taken this example? Because they lead the technology bandwagon for the country. The combined valuation of these startups is about $450 billion, and more than 7.5 lakh or 0.7 million people work in startups alone. So that's a massive revolution that we are actually seeing out here. And if I just pick up the example of AI, for example, artificial intelligence, which is now disrupting the world and disrupting humanity, there are more and more job opportunities available for people. For example, if you look at it, AI ethics, AI lawyers, AI sociologists, an unheard of career is now available here for you. You have a combination of product designers, so they tell you why you should be building a product. You have data scientists, which will tell you what to do. And then you have data engineers who will tell you how to do it. So it's a very interesting combination where HR, sociology, psychology, law, technology is all coming together, and we are disrupting ourselves. That's AI. So for youngsters, it's a very exciting time to be in. And if I may give them 4 messages on what they can potentially do. The first one is what I call the Walt Disney way, which is that whenever you have an idea, you should have 3 types of people in the room to debate on the idea. The dreamer, basically the person who dreams an idea. A realist who looks at more and more of realism, whether an idea will work or not. And the third category is a spoiler, whose job is to punch holes into your idea. So the moment you have 3 types of such people in the room, your ability to debate and out of hundreds of ideas distill into one that can potentially become a unicorn or a decacorn is the way it is. The second suggestion for young minds is that always remember the future. Sometimes it's difficult to predict what's going to happen in the next 1 minute itself. But if you can potentially look at something which is a little more futuristic and will see you for at least a 5 to 10 year horizon, then that's the technology to be focusing on. For example, when Uber came in, they removed all the intermediaries and they directly brought the logistics and the car transportation person to the consumer, that is people like us. If you look at Airbnb, all the intermediaries which are gone, now it's directly between the boarding or the motels or the hotels and the consumers. So wherever you remove the intermediary and you reimagine the future, it's a great place to be in. Third tip would be that always look at how you can imagine how the day in the life of that person will look like. So for example, if you're building an app, a super app where you have everything possible, like a Tata Neu, if you're familiar with that app, a super app from the Tata Group. If you can imagine right from the morning when you order groceries, to your cooking, to your transportation, to your office working, to your restaurant booking, if everything can be made available in one app and you can imagine how the person will consume, then it's a great place to ideate and make it a little more realistic. And the last is, how do you get in collective minds at all times? So crowdsourcing and hackathons, something which people are very familiar with. How do you get the best minds together into one room, ideate, debate, thrash it out, and make the most of it?
Yeah, yeah, that's a nice tips for the now. I mean, the tech kids or the tech guys who are coming for the innovation, like the youngsters. And coming to the next question, what's your opinion on industry revolution changing people as a self-reliance?
The saying goes that human is a social being. You're always interconnected, and that interconnected has taken a very different meaning, which is interconnected through the virtual reality rather than physical reality. So let's see some of the advances which are happening in technology, where humans as an individual or a collection of individuals, even though we call humanity as a super organism, but we are still one human by human. You look at 5G technology, you're able to now get speeds of 40 Gbps and beyond, which means you can download, coming back to my Netflix example, in a span of a few minutes rather than hours and waiting for your circle to keep going around and around. There is very interesting what we call Internet of Behaviors. We've been using Facebook for more than a decade, and ever wondered why, if you are using Make My Trip and that ad pops up in Facebook or now Meta, everything is interconnected. So people know more about you than you know about yourself. And there are websites which actually know more than 80% of you, which is perhaps more than your parents, more than your friends, more than your spouse or your significant half itself. So the moment people can start predicting on what you can potentially eat, potentially buy, and start recommending that to you, that removes what we call the thinking part from you, which has a flip side to it also. But then you start following orders of the machines as to they will direct what you can potentially do. And that's what we do. You ask anyone a question, we'll say, yeah, I'll check on Google. So that's become a standard answer. Third very interesting thing which is happening is human augmentation. Earlier, people used to feel that they are perhaps not sufficient, or they're deficient in certain areas, physically, mentally, energetically. But now with human augmentation, you can augment the human body in multiple respects. So if you're familiar with Elon Musk, who's much in the news nowadays, and his company Neuralink is there, which basically connects to the brain and does brain augmentation. So it will help you see better, it will help you visualize better, it will help you communicate better. And there are companies which are now doing brain dumps, which means all your memories, the brain here can store 2.5 petabytes of data, which is massive. So if you are actually able to store all that data and create a human replica of yours, then who knows, all the sci-fi movies that we see that you're sitting in a cryogenic cell and getting frozen for dozens of years, actually all of your experiences and learning is all here. The other thing which I'll interestingly talk about, of course, is artificial intelligence. And they're talking about something called singularity, where by 2030, which is not too far off, about 8 years away, people are talking about how AI will overtake the intelligence of humans, which in some sense they already have. But if you look at AI coming in through robots, they're almost everywhere. Industrial robots, manufacturing robots, human kitchen robots, doctor robots, nurse robots, you have them all around you. So that's another disruption which is happening. So through all these technology advances, the dependency of one human on the other has reduced significantly, but the dependency of a human on machines or AI or technology or innovation has gone up significantly. Debate will go on, but that's the way things are moving.
Yeah. And as the new Indian thought process is leading towards global to local, what's your thought on industrial exploration in villages?
So it's very interesting. There are about 6 lakh villages in the country, which is about 0.6 million. And 68% of India's youth actually stay in villages itself, which is massive again. And if you look at just the population of all ages, there are about 1 billion people out of the 1.3 billion that India talks about now, closer to 1.4. Out of that, 1 billion stay in villages itself. So it's a big reckoning force. It's a big population that you have to look at. And people, especially the youth, because of the connectivity, because of internet, because of telecom, they are thinking differently, they're experiencing differently. So gone are the days where they were stuck to that, beta, you must go for a government job. Those days are absolutely over. And they're moving from more traditional agricultural handicraft kind of roles into more technology-oriented, disruptive roles itself. So people now have what we call rural BPOs or KPOs. People are now going into tier 3, tier 4 cities as far as recruitment goes. And a lot of the startups are being made for villages itself. For example, there are 1,300 companies or startups that focus on agri-tech, agriculture technology, predominantly in the villages itself. So if you give a chance to the youth in the villages, they are multi-skilled, multilingual, multicultured, and their ability to rough it out in tough conditions of society is much, much more than perhaps children who are staying in townships. So if you give them the right opportunity in what India calls 𝐷𝐸, self-sustenance, self-motivation, then if you give them learning and enablement, you give them the right technology, the right entrepreneurial skill sets itself, you give them exposure to corporates, to academia, to government schemes itself, and you give them data to play around with. For example, India has Aadhaar, billion plus people. India has UPI. India now has ONDC coming through, which is the open network, digital commerce. There are so many initiatives of digital which are coming through where physicality of being in a town or a village really doesn't matter. Yes. So I think that's the right place to tap onto, and that should uplift not just the economy but people at large through technology.
Actually, this is one of the questions I want to ask. Is COVID also impacted on this?
The initial impact was fairly high, but of course it only trickled to the villages because the level of knowledge, the level of enablement, the level of vaccination was still a little low. But I think in the last 6 to 9 months, it's all of the economy, all of the people have rebounded. And I think we've gone beyond, we've got past, if I may say so, at least the COVID hump. And India being touted to grow at 6.5% annually for the next 10 years, I think villages and the non-urban areas will play a massive role. So I think the country is on track.
Yeah. And but before I explored your LinkedIn profile before starting this podcast, but really I want to know who's your icon and who inspired you and made dimensional changes for your thought process.
So I don't have one icon, and I think I realized this in life, that the moment you have an icon, then you start looking at that person, you start worshipping that icon, you try and mimic whatever that person does. But the person is still human and his or her capability is also limited. But if you were to look at every person around you as a guru, irrespective of age, irrespective of caste, race, religion, then everyone can be a potentially an icon for you. There is always something to learn from someone. So you have to just be open, without inhibition, without biases, and try to learn from everyone around you and keep an open mind. Keep our mind away from learnability, because the moment we start applying ourselves with our history, with our knowledge, with our biases, then we become very selective in who's good, who's bad, whom we should learn from, whom we should not learn from. But if you keep your thoughtfulness, openness, and learnability with everyone, then everyone is an icon for you. And that's what I believe in life.
That's great. And what's your thoughts on Indian future? Can we become a leader of order?
So on the lighter note, India is much in the news, right from UK, and 6 other countries where there are people of Indian origin outside of India who are actually ruling that country or in a leadership position itself. But I think it's a time which I will say is, India awakens. And some statistics, it's already become the 5th largest economy in the world. And it's touted that in the next decade or so, roughly 25% of the growth that will happen across the globe will happen through India itself. So if you look at the massive advantages of a young population, like I gave, 50% of the population is less than 25, which is massive. If you look at the IT revolution, which happened in the late 80s, which is now about a $225 billion industry, growing at about 10% annually, which is massive again. Somewhere I was reading an article that the maximum number of people who are digitally trained are in India. If you look at the data bank, like I mentioned, of Aadhaar, which is for citizen enablement, citizen enrollment services. If you look at UPI with billions of transactions happening every month, and now with UPI and RuPay actually getting externalized, there are countries like Singapore, UAE who are actually adopting the Indian digital currency in that sense. If you look at sustainability and ecology, there is a massive investment happening. India is looking at 2070 to be carbon neutral, but it's going to be about $5 trillion of spending and about 5 crores or 50 million jobs that will get created out of this. So I think India is in a very unique position. Also, India has not polarized itself with any geopolitical tensions which are happening, which is very, very rampant across countries. And since it's fairly neutral and standing on its own, it is being seen as an independent nation, ready to be the driving force. And a testimony to that, of course, is the G20 summit, which is supposed to happen next year, 2023, where India is actually hosting that. So that's a good culmination of the India story.
Yeah, but last but not least, this is the most requested question from me while I'm saying from my friends I'm organizing a podcast. They said that there is a confusion between every student who is going to be a graduated. That whether I go for a job, whether I go for a startup, whether I go for a or else higher studies, how to overcome this dilemma?
The good thing is that children from college nowadays are much more independent in their decision making. Earlier, we used to take our guidance, and during our time, it was engineering or medicine, take it or leave it. But now, if you look at it, there are enough career opportunities. But I think my suggestion to youngsters would be that they must listen to themselves. They must look at, rather than externally, look within as to what they really want to do. And no career is good or bad. There is no mantra that you should do an MBA after your engineering. That's a must do. That those days are gone. It's not necessary that you need to work immediately. You can go in for higher studies. So there are enough combinations available. Me personally, I'm an engineer. I did my computer engineering. I got an opportunity to do my MBA, but I never did that. And now when I look back, it really didn't make too much of a difference. The key points from my side is one, that look at not just learning, look at what I call applied learning or experiential learning, which means whatever you learn, try it out in life in different forms. That's the way you will be able to ingrain. Otherwise, there is enough in textbooks that you can learn, get your marks, and get into engineering or even higher studies. So applied learning would be my first suggestion to people. Look at that. The second, of course, is that always be in motion. Sometimes this notion comes that, I finished my 12th, I've gone into an engineering college, great. Life is made. Like in Hindi, if you understand, they say, yaar, ab to life ban gayi, aur aage kuch nahi chahiye. But that cycle of life, you're on a running treadmill. Within a few months, you can become outdated. So the pace of learning, the running treadmill with where both the speed and the incline is always increasing. You have to keep pace. So constant learning is a second thing which I will tell people: applied learning and constant learning. The third is this entire ability to be connected with people, and with the internet bringing you virtually close to every human on this planet, you are able to now learn from others in a very connected fashion. So keep the collaborative spirit on, whether you're doing a project in your 7th semester, or you're actually doing an internship, or you're joining a startup. It really doesn't matter. This eternal debate will always be there. Do you join a startup or a well-established company? Well, it really matters on what is there on the table. So no job is good or bad. It's a question of your risk-taking ability, what you want to really do in life, and what contribution you can actually make. So no easy answer. I'm happy to share my experience with people on an individual basis, but I can only give guidance based on my life experience and relationships. You have to make your own decision ultimately.
I hope for this answer, most of you will connect with the LinkedIn. And thank you so much, Rohit, for sharing your experiences with us. I hope we are going to see you in the next podcast soon. Thank you, and signing off.
Thank you very much. Thank you to the audience for listening in. Bye-bye.